Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you're in the e-commerce space, you already know data is the lifeblood of your storefront. But what you might not realize is the massive revenue impact that hidden technical schema issues are having on your bottom line right now. Today, we're going to break down the highly technical gremlins that are quietly throttling your sales. It's a terrifying question, right? Why are your top products suddenly disappearing from Google? I mean, you haven't changed your products lines, the site is up and running perfectly, but out of nowhere, your visibility just tanks and you're hit with account penalties. This is a massive, massive pain point for e-commerce managers. So today, we're going to act as technical detectives to figure out exactly why this happens, and more importantly, how you can stop it. Here's our roadmap for today. We're covering e-commerce data chaos, merchant center alignment, product variant architecture, review aggregation schema, and finally, the golden rule of schema. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into section 1, e-commerce data chaos. The stark reality here is that hidden conflicts between your data sources are silently killing your e-commerce revenue and search visibility. You see, this usually happens when platforms maintain their systems entirely separately. Your SEO team is over here updating the website schema, while your paid search team is off managing the Google Merchant Center feed. Over time, these separately maintained sources begin to drift apart. It's kind of like two musicians playing from slightly different sheet music. Eventually, the whole song just derails. It's a silent killer because you don't even notice the accumulation of these tiny discrepancies until Google actually suppresses your listings. And that brings us to our first pillar, which is a critical severity issue, merchant center alignment. What's really interesting here is the literal crash that happens when these systems collide. You got your product schema flowing in from one side and your merchant center feed flowing in from the other. When Google compares them and they disagree on fundamental facts like price, availability, or the GTIN product identifier, boom, policy violation. Google suppresses the product entirely because, well, it just doesn't know which data source to trust. So what causes this crash? Well, it's usually one of these four things. First, as we just mentioned, the schema and feed are just maintained completely separately. Second, you run a flash sale, the price updates on the website schema, but the feed gets left behind. And let me be absolutely clear here, even a difference of just a few cents can trigger a Google pricing violation. Third, your feed might be generated from a stale weekly export while the actual site is updating in real time. And finally, GTIN inconsistencies. That's your product's global barcode. If that identifier is in the schema but missing from the feed, Google instantly flags the data as unreliable. Luckily, there is a clear fix for this. Steps 1 and 2, crawl your site to compare your schema directly against your feed and flag any price discrepancies. But pay special attention to step 3, spotting availability mismatches. Listen, if your schema says in stock but your feed says out of stock, or vice versa, this creates incredibly severe account-level quality penalties from Google. It's a massive red flag. Finally, steps 4 through 7 are all about prevention. Establish a single database source of truth, sync your sale prices to that single generation process, and then set up a weekly routine to monitor the whole shebang. All right, let's move on to our second pillar, product variant architecture. Now, this brilliantly illustrates what we call variant chaos. Imagine every size, color, and style shooting off unorganized, messy signals to Google, completely confusing the crawler. It's a mess. Contrast that with a neat, consolidated data structure that maps all of those variant configurations back to one clearly defined parent product. To achieve that neat structure, we really need to understand how variant schema is supposed to work. It's actually a really elegant solution when done right. You have one parent product schema that represents the item in general, say a specific model of t-shirt. Then, nested cleanly inside that, you have individual offer blocks that represent each purchasable variant configuration. You know, the red small, the blue medium, and so on. But platforms often get this wrong, which creates some major pitfalls. A huge one is Shopify variant URL chaos. Shopify notoriously generates separate URLs for every single variant. If those URLs don't have proper canonical tags, which are basically digital signposts pointing back to the main product, Google ends up indexing thousands of near-duplicate pages. This causes massive index bloat, clogging up search results and suppressing your shopping eligibility. Or developers might just implement the wrong variant architecture entirely. So your absolute first step to fix this is to determine your specific CMS URL architecture. You literally can't write the correct schema until you know if your site uses a single URL or separate, distinct URLs for every single variant. Now, let's transition to our third and final technical pillar, review aggregation schema. This right here represents the absolute highest ROI opportunity available, with no new content needed. This is the exact dynamic we are aiming for. You already have customers leaving great reviews on your website, right? Well, Review Aggregation Schema acts as a translator. It takes that existing HTML review data and dynamically pushes it directly to the search engine results page. That's how you get those beautiful, highly visible golden stars to surface right under your product link. And why does that matter? Because those stars typically provide a massive 15 to 30% improvement in your click-through rate on competitive queries. Let's be honest, as buyers, we are pretty simple creatures. When a customer sees a row of listings and yours is the only one shining with a 5-star rating, they are overwhelmingly more likely to click your link. So, the crucial point is the technical execution of this, which is called aggregate rating schema. But here is where most setups fail. Aggregate rating must be nested inside the product block. A standalone review schema simply will not produce product stars on Google. Furthermore, it needs to generate a dynamic rating value and review count based on the reviews actually visible in your page's HTML. If your stars are missing, it's usually due to one of these silent killers. Number 1, as I just mentioned, the aggregate rating isn't nested. Number 2, you're using third-party widgets like Yotpo or Trustpilot, and they rely on background code that isn't actually rendering the text in the HTML for Googlebot to read. Number 3 is dramatic but oh so common static review counts. A developer hard-codes your schema to say you have 50 reviews. 6 months later, you actually have 150 reviews on the page. As that static schema slowly diverges from the real-time reality of the page, Google loses trust and your stars just silently vanish without warning. Finally, including external platform reviews that aren't visible on the page will absolutely kill your stars too. To fix this, just follow this sequence. First, confirm your on-page reviews, then build that nested aggregate rating schema. Crucially, ensure those values pull dynamically from your database. You'll want to add top review schemas to strengthen the signal. But actually, quick warning on step 5. Omit this entirely if a product has 0 reviews. Empty tags look terrible to Google. Finally, confirm rendering with a tool like Screaming Frog's rendering view to ensure Googlebot actually sees the widget text and validate everything in Google's rich results test.
Okay, section 5, the golden rule of schema.
We've covered a lot of ground today, looking at Merchant Center, variants, and reviews. Let's tie all 3 of these highly technical pillars together into one unifying principle. This is the core pro tip, the absolute golden rule of schema. Let this sink in. Generate schema and feed from the same source, simultaneously. Whether we're talking about pricing data, variant URLs, or dynamic review counts, treating your website and your data feeds as completely separate systems means divergence isn't just a risk, it is completely inevitable. You absolutely have to connect both outputs to the exact same product database query. Which leaves us with this final thought for you to consider as you audit your own architecture today. Look at your e-commerce platform right now and ask yourself, is your data telling a single, unified story to search engines, or is it actively fighting against itself? Because if you fix the conflicts, you open the floodgates to visibility and revenue. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy auditing.